I was uninvited from my mom's birthday because apparently I didn't fit next to my sister's boyfriend. Ironically, I was actually his boss. He locked eyes with me and said, "If you're still planning to show up, don't call me your father." 3 weeks later, on my mom's birthday, their house lost power, water, and internet all at once. Stick with my story. You might see a reflection of yourself in it. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm 30 and live in a small town about 40 minutes from Seattle. Each morning I brew a cup of coffee, check the weather, and drive less than 10 minutes to work. I co-founded a modest tech company that focuses on sustainable energy. Not everyone understands what I do, especially my family. They still picture me spending my days tightening screws and fixing machines, which I don't mind at all. I've never felt compelled to explain. When someone asks about my family, my parents or my sister Jessica, I offer a faint smile. "It's been a while since we talked," I say. That's all. I'm not hiding anything. I just don't see the point in recounting it anymore. I haven't reached out in over 2 years. No calls, no texts, no holidays, no birthdays. Just a long, quiet stretch, as if the bond had been cut and no one attempted to mend it. I used to believe family meant everything, but 2 years ago, on my mother's birthday, that belief shattered. 2 years ago, just 3 weeks before my mom's birthday, I had booked a trip and cleared some time off work. The plan was straightforward: head home early, stay a few days, and help with the usual preparations, just like every year. Nothing out of the ordinary. I wanted to let them know right away. I called my mom, but my dad picked up after only 2 rings. "I'll be home 2 days early," I said casually. "If there's anything you need me to grab or help with, just tell me." At first, his response was vague. Then he paused. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded off heavier than usual, like he was trying to dodge something. "Ryan, if possible, maybe don't come home this year." I assumed he was just worried about my timing. "It's fine, Dad," I replied, still holding my warm mug of coffee. "I've got everything planned. It's no trouble at all." The pause stretched longer this time. Then his voice returned, firmer and icy. "Jessica's bringing her boyfriend home this year. He's a manager, someone respectable, well-spoken, carries himself well. And your job? Not exactly something to boast about. Best if you don't come." Heat surged from the back of my neck to my face. My heart raced, and I gripped my coffee mug tighter. "What did you just say?" I snapped, unable to keep calm. "Are you seriously saying this to me?" He didn't argue, apologize, or soften his words. Instead, he cut straight to the point. "You coming home would just embarrass the whole family. If you insist on coming, don't call me your father." And with that, he hung up without a pause. I set the phone down. My palm trembled, slightly damp with sweat. The apartment was silent. No TV, no footsteps, just me, frozen, staring into nothing, feeling torn from my own life. His words replayed in my mind, slow, deliberate, unrelenting. "You coming home would just embarrass the whole family. If you insist on coming back, don't call me your father." For a moment I thought I'd misheard, but every syllable was cold and heavy, unyielding. There was no slip, no mercy, no room for hope. My jaw clenched, my throat tightened, as if something lodged there and refused to move. Instantly, memories surged back. I had silently paid all their bills, electricity, water, internet, for over 2 years. No one ever acknowledged it. And now here I was, branded the family's disgrace. I grabbed my phone, hands still trembling slightly, though my mind was slowly regaining some clarity. I opened my banking app and scrolled to my transaction history. My only goal was to see exactly how much I had spent on my family over the past 2 years. Every month, without fail, I had paid the power, water, and internet bills, automatic deductions, handled on schedule. For 24 months straight, nearly $400 a month had quietly left my account. I scrolled to the very bottom. Total $9,842.17. I stared at the number, not out of shock, but because something inside me finally stilled. Not anger, not grief, just a hollow quiet. Almost $10,000, and now they call me the family's disgrace. As I looked over the long list of payments, a silent question formed. One nobody in my family had ever asked in 30 years. Has Jessica ever done as much for our parents as I have? It wasn't envy, nor a craving for recognition. I simply wondered, if I am the family's shame, what standard are they measuring me against? I had quietly covered nearly $10,000 in their living expenses, never asking for thanks or acknowledgement. And her, has she ever sacrificed anything, or sought help when needed? Or did she just show up, dress nicely, smile for the cameras, and impress everyone with her successful boyfriend? I wasn't keeping score. I was realizing for the first time that fairness had never been part of this household. Since childhood, I had been invisible at the edges. In family photos, I was often half hidden behind someone else, or caught on the fringe, never really facing the camera. No one told me to move, but I always did. Meanwhile, Jessica occupied the center of every family milestone, birthdays, graduations, even her heartbreaks. There was always a reason for everyone to gather, console and celebrate her. I can't remember the last time anyone asked if I was okay. Jessica is 2 years older than me. But the difference between us was never about age. She was the shining star, the future our parents proudly showcased whenever relatives visited. And me? If I was mentioned at all, it was only a passing footnote. Ryan? Oh, he's fine. I think he works in tech. I used to believe that if I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and quietly handled everything, eventually they'd notice. They never did. It turns out that when you're invisible for long enough, no one even notices when you disappear. I started covering my parents' utility bills, electricity, water, internet, almost 2 years ago. It began with my mother's call. That day she complained about rising costs, about bills that had spiked unexpectedly, about their retirement income no longer stretching far enough. Then gently, hesitantly, she added, "If you could help, even a little, it would mean so much." I agreed, thinking it would only be temporary. But month after month, the pattern repeated itself. No one ever said to stop. No backup plan appeared. Every so often I asked, "Is Jessica helping at all, Mom?" She always skirted the question. Sometimes, "Just this month, your sister will help next time." Other times, "She's covering Dad's medical expenses." It's not easy either. I heard these lines so often, I could recite them without thinking. And every time I smiled and let it pass, knowing the truth. So I kept sending the money, nearly $400 a month, quietly, consistently, without complaint. No one acknowledged it. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew it was the right thing to do. I used to believe that if I stayed quiet, responsible, and reliable, they would notice me. But now, after everything, they just look at me and call me the family shame. For a long while, the apartment was silent, and I sat frozen on the couch, phone still in hand. I wasn't angry, nor was I heartbroken. Only one feeling filled my chest. Enough. Slowly, I opened my banking app and navigated to the automatic payments section. Those monthly transfers I'd set up to cover their power, water, and internet. One by one, I canceled them. Softly, deliberately, not out of revenge, but to reclaim the one thing they hadn't taken from me, my self-respect. About a week later, my mother sent her first message since that day. In her usual gentle tone. There was no acknowledgement of what had happened. No apology, just a request. "The internet bill is due. Can you take care of it?" I stared at the screen for a long moment, and then set the phone down without replying. Not to make a point, but because, after everything, the first thing they thought to say was a request. No, "Are you okay?" Or even a simple "Can we talk?" So I stayed silent. That silence said everything. 2 weeks later, my father called. The phone rang a few times before stopping. I didn't answer. Minutes later, a voicemail arrived. Sharp, impatient, the same tone he always used. The power company called. "This month's bill hasn't been paid. What's going on?" No concern, no mention of what he had said when I called about coming home for Mom's birthday. I listened, turned off the screen, and placed the phone face down. Just like that, I remained silent, and I stayed that way all the way through my mother's birthday. My mother's birthday came about 3 weeks after my father told me not to come home. The celebration went on as usual. Her favorite roasted chicken, a cake from her preferred bakery, and a few close relatives gathered around the table. Everything was perfectly planned, except for me. That afternoon, exactly at 4 p.m., I sat in my living room with a cup of coffee long gone cold. My phone chimed. It was my mother calling. I stared at her name on the screen for several seconds before setting it down. I didn't answer. Not once. A few minutes later, my father called, then Jessica. 3 calls in under 10 minutes. I let them ring through. There was no curiosity in me. No urge to reply. I stayed put, leaning lightly against the back of the chair, eyes fixed on the fogged-up window. Outside, the sky was a dull gray. No rain, just a cold, creeping quiet that hinted winter had brushed against the world. About 10 minutes later, messages began to arrive. Mom first. Ryan, the power's been shut off. The house is dark. Please pay the bill. I read it in silence. No anger, no shock. Just a hollow calm that settles in your chest when you've spent years carrying a family and find yourself the only one left to shoulder the weight. Then my father's message. No water. We can't cook. Handle it now. And following that, Jessica chimed in. Internet's down. Guests are arriving. I glanced at the clock. 5:12 p.m. I remembered it vividly. I had canceled all automatic payments exactly 3 weeks ago, right after my father told me that if I insisted on coming home, I shouldn't call him Dad ever again. And now, in the middle of the birthday party I wasn't supposed to attend, everything started failing. Power, water, internet, each disappearing at the exact moment they needed it most. I didn't text back or call. There was no need to explain. I simply sat there, carefully turning the cold coffee cup in my hands, eyes still fixed on the window, as if looking beyond what I could see. At that moment it hit me. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were calling because there was no one left to bear the burden. Around 6 p.m., my phone began buzzing again, this time relentlessly. But these calls weren't from my parents or Jessica anymore. They came from the relatives who only show up on holidays, yet feel entitled to judge. Messages arrived in waves. Some called me disrespectful. One wrote bluntly, "You embarrassed your mother in front of the whole family." Another, quieter but no less cutting, said, "Your sister was right. People like you shouldn't be here on a happy day." I read each one without replying, not because silence meant agreement, but because I had long grown weary of explaining myself to people who always chose the louder crowd over what was right. Just as I was about to set the phone down, the screen lit up again. Aunt Lauren, the only family member who still trusted me, was calling via video on that old app only the two of us still used. She was the only one who cared enough to look me in the eyes when it mattered. I hesitated, then answered on the second ring. Her face appeared first, dimly lit by the yellow glow of her kitchen behind her. A space I knew intimately, every crack in the wall, every creaking cabinet. But tonight, the room felt different. Clinks of silverware, uneasy laughter, and snippets of small talk echoed faintly in the background. She looked at me through the screen, her eyes warm but heavy with concern. "You're not going to pay for it, Ryan," she said, her tone gentle, almost testing the waters to see what had happened. I met her gaze and finally spoke, my voice slow and heavy, as though dredging up something long buried. "You know, Auntie, it was Dad who told me not to come." I swallowed hard. He said if I still insisted on showing up, I shouldn't call him my father anymore. She fell silent, her eyes shifting as if scanning the room behind her. Then the call erupted into chaos. I could hear my mother's voice cutting through the noise. "Tell him I'm ashamed of him. On this day, of all days, how could he do this?" My father's sharp, loud retort followed. "It's not that serious. It's just paying a few bills." "What kind of man gets petty over money?" came another voice. "Probably my uncle. Poor Jessica, having to deal with a brother like that." Footsteps shuffled, and Jessica appeared behind Aunt Lauren, arms crossed, lips twisted with annoyance. He even picked up the call. "Mom's been crying all day. Does he even care?" "Seriously, no shame at all." I said nothing. I just watched, silent, as if that was the only defense left. I was about to end the call when another face appeared on the left side of the screen. A young man with neatly combed hair, a dark suit, and eyes full of cautious confusion. He hesitated, then said, "Hey boss." His voice was a little scratchy, unsure if the words fit the moment. I froze, gripping the phone tighter. My gaze locked on him. Not here. Not tonight. When apparently I was too much of a disgrace to be invited. I studied him a few seconds longer, and then it hit me. His expression, his tone, it clicked. Of course, he was one of the new employees recently transferred from our southern branch. We'd exchanged a few emails. I'd received 2 reports from him, but I had no idea he was Jessica's boyfriend, the one everyone was trying to impress. The room behind Aunt Lauren seemed to hold its breath. I caught her glance over her shoulder, and the kitchen erupted into frantic murmurs. Then a quiet voice said, "Wait, what did he just call Ryan?" Another added, confused, "Boss? Does that mean Ryan is Jessica's boyfriend's boss?" The whispers grew, overlapping, rising like a wave. And me? I just kept staring at the screen, letting it all sink in. No nod, no denial. I simply waited to see how it would unfold. Then the young man straightened, glanced past the camera at the others in the room, and spoke clearly. "In case you didn't know, I work at Pacific Terratech. Mr. Ryan is one of the company's co-founders." His words were precise, audible enough to cut through the clatter of dishes and murmurs, and the room fell into an unusual silence. Not awkward, just stunned, I thought, still saying nothing. I pressed my lips together, offering a subtle nod in quiet acknowledgement. He returned his gaze to the screen, eyes wide, and I spoke calmly, deliberately, as if the words had been waiting. "Hope your big introduction goes perfectly." Then I disconnected. That night, I slept deeply. No tossing, no sudden awakenings, no replaying old questions in the dark. For the first time in years, I felt light, not from satisfaction, but because they had finally acknowledged who I was. The next morning, before sunlight fully filtered through the thin curtains, I reached for my phone to check emails as usual. Meeting reminders, a few accounting notes, and then a name I didn't recognize in the sender field. Hudson Kane. I opened the email, and the first line hit me immediately. "I'm sorry. I hadn't realized you were Jessica's brother. I've always respected you at the company." I raised an eyebrow, leaned back into the pillow, and continued reading. Hudson explained that he had been completely taken aback to learn of the family connection between Jessica and me. Then, without hedging or softening the blow, he wrote, "I didn't expect her to be like that. I'm ending this relationship. Thank you for not putting me on the spot in front of everyone." I set the phone on my chest and closed my eyes for a moment. After a few minutes, I reopened the inbox and began typing my reply slowly, deliberately, without any flourish. "Hudson, that's your decision. I don't expect anyone to act just to stay in my good graces. Think carefully before you act. And for the record, I don't mix family with the workplace." I pressed send. No second thoughts, no lingering emotions, just finality. For me, that was enough. Some things, once clarified, need no further explanation. Around 10 a.m., while wrapping up a meeting with the department heads and taking notes, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Jessica's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for a moment before declining, not out of anger, not to make a statement, but because I had grown tired of apologies that only came after the damage was done. Within 5 minutes, a message arrived. "I'm sorry. I didn't expect Hudson to react like that. You're his boss. If you said something, I'm sure he'd listen. Please talk to him. Ask him to come back to me." I moved to the hallway window and leaned against it, reading her words over and over before typing a measured reply. "Hudson didn't leave because I told him to. He left because of how you live, how you treat people, how you dismiss what you don't understand, and how you always assume a soft enough voice can steer anyone." I sent it, pocketed the phone, and returned to my desk. Less than a minute later, another message appeared. "I know I messed up. This time I mean it. I'll change. Please believe me. Just this once." I didn't respond. I read it, sat with it, and felt nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Sometimes the gap between two people isn't in the apology itself, but in when it arrives. I gently deleted the message, leaving nothing behind, and returned to my life. A week later, on a Friday afternoon, I walked back into my home from the garage and froze on the porch. My parents stood there, each clutching a small suitcase, their faces drawn and exhausted from the long journey. I didn't ask why they were here, or if they had traveled all this way to see me. This was not a casual visit. I opened the door and let them in. No tension, no forced pleasantries, just a simple, deliberate choice. I didn't want to have that conversation out on the porch, where the wind had started picking up. We settled in the living room, the tea on the table still steaming. My father spoke first, his apology quieter than usual. My mother followed, explaining that they'd thought things through, admitting perhaps they had gone too far, that it should never have come to this. I stayed silent, simply listening, trying to discern whether this apology marked an ending or the start of something new. As I had anticipated, my father's tone shifted. "We're family, Ryan. Family helps each other. We raised you, sent you to school, everything you have now, some part of it comes from us, right?" I looked at him, expression unchanged, though I straightened my posture slightly. Then my mother spoke, her voice low and measured, as if offering a truth that had long gone unspoken. "If you could, maybe send us about $2,000 a month. Just a little support. It's not much for someone like you." I stared at the two people in my living room, the same people who had once uninvited me from a family event, calling me an embarrassment, and now here they were, sitting in my house, placing a monetary value on their apology, $2,000 a month, for being their son. To them my success was a debt I owed. I let out a quiet chuckle, not loud, not sarcastic, just the kind that comes when something doesn't add up. Their eyes stayed locked on mine, expecting a nod, a silent agreement. But I wasn't angry. I'd come too far to let this bother me. I leaned back in my chair, voice calm and deliberate. "What about Jessica? How much is she contributing each month?" For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The air grew tight. My father shot a glance at my mother. She replied slowly, her voice softening slightly. "Your sister's job, it's still unstable. And the breakup with Hudson, it's taken a toll on her." I nodded quietly, unsurprised. The familiar excuses, dressed in empathy, were nothing more than deflections. I lifted my gaze, meeting theirs directly. "If she agrees to support you with $2,000 a month, I'll do the same. No more, no less." They said nothing, just stared, trying to gauge if I was serious. I continued, calm and deliberate. "Or, if you want me to cover the full amount, I'll need it in writing, a legal agreement confirming that after you both pass, the house will belong entirely to me." I stayed still after that. No pressure, no added explanation. Just waiting to see how they would react now that, for the first time, I was setting the terms for what they had always considered my responsibility. Silence fell, heavy and dense. Then my father sprang to his feet, slamming his palm onto the hardwood table. The teacup toppled, spilling its contents down the side. His shout reverberated through the room, chest heaving with fury. "You're setting conditions for your parents? We raised you for over 20 years. And now you want to nickel and dime us like this? What kind of life are you living, huh?" He was shouting so loudly, I wouldn't have been surprised if the neighbors had heard every word. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I remained seated, hands resting on the chair's armrests, eyes fixed on him, not cold but no longer soft. I let him finish before standing slowly, deliberately. My voice was low, calm, but carried clearly enough to cut through the chaos he had stirred. "I think you both should leave my house." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was simply the words of someone who had reached the very limits of what respect could endure. No one spoke after that. Only the sound of their suitcases scraping across the hardwood, and the door clicking softly behind them remained quieter than all the chaos they had just left inside me. It's been 2 years since I last saw them in my own home. I didn't block their numbers, change my email, or cut them off entirely. I simply stopped reaching out, and waited to see if they would still consider me family once I was no longer under the weight of duty and obligation. In the past 2 years, no call, no message, no inquiry about how I was doing, no mention of birthdays, health, or even a simple "how are you?" I once believed they might change, but I've come to realize that not everyone does, especially those who have never acknowledged they were wrong. I still live here, work and go about my days. The difference is that I no longer let myself be an emotional ATM, eager to give and get hurt in the name of obligation. And if there's one lesson I've learned from all of this, it's that family is not a place where kindness can be demanded and called love. True family values you as a person, not for what you provide, not as a wallet, not as a backup plan, not as a last resort when all else fails. And before I close this chapter, I want to leave you with a question. Was I wrong to refuse returning home and declining to cover $2,000 a month for my parents, even though they are elderly and raised me? I once believed a family could solve any problem, but after being treated like a stranger in my own home again and again, I chose to stand my ground and break the cycle. Was I overly cold? Perhaps I was simply learning to value myself at exactly the right time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree or disagree with my choices? Please leave your opinions in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing to help support the channel. There are still many more real-life stories waiting to be told and heard. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching and staying until the end. For more shocking and emotional real-life stories, don't forget to subscribe to A Father's Wrath and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.